Hello, everyone. This is Jennifer Steck. I am one of the members of the leadership team for Artburst Studios, and we are so delighted that you're joining us tonight to meet with several of our artists for the upcoming Beyond Beautiful show. Lillie, Stephanie, and Julie are just three of our 9 artists that will be featured in the upcoming online Beyond Beautiful show. It opens in about 2 weeks. Can you believe it? Just 2 weeks on August 15th at 10 a.m. Mountain Daylight Time on artburststudios.com. So this is an online art show. And the beautiful thing about that is you can shop for incredible art from your home in your jammies or with a glass of wine or with music playing in the background, because there's going to be some truly incredible works of art. And we're going to get started with Lillie. How are you, Lillie?
I'm good, Jennifer. How are you?
Not too bad. So where are you coming to us from?
I am coming to you from rural Columbia County, Georgia. So if you know
Oh,
a little Southern accent, it's legitimate.
oh, I love that. I love that. And we were talking just briefly before we all came on, and you said the humidity there is pretty high.
About 90 to 95%. It's horrid, to put it mildly. If you're going to get outside, it needs to be before 9 o'clock.
Wow. Yeah, we have the dry heat here, but it's still, as you can tell, I'm a little flushed because it's a little warm here in Denver for sure. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Lillie.
Well, I am a native Augustan. Augusta, Georgia is the closest city to where we live here in Columbia County. Most people know Augusta. Its claim to fame is the Masters golf tournament.
Mhm.
So, home of the Masters. So, I was born and raised in Augusta, Georgia. Went all the way through my public school and college education here in Augusta. I married my high school sweetheart, and we have 2 sons. They're both married. We have 2 beautiful daughters-in-law and 4 grandchildren. I started out majoring in college, and I'll get uh, into this a little bit more later, but my initial major was art with a minor in music. But out of a sense of practicality and from a little urging from my parents back in the early 1970s, I switched my major to nursing and enjoyed a 30-year career as a critical care nurse. So and that's basically who I am. We love living out here in the country. We have a farm with, I mean, it's a gentleman's farm. We harvest hay. We have a few cows, a few goats, and a couple of donkeys and a cat. So it's a wonderful way to spend these later years in our lives.
Yes, that sounds so exciting. There's something about magical about hearing that you have those animals with you, because I know, I mean, I've got my dogs, but I'm always kind of in love with the places where I can see those kinds of farm animals out there. How exciting. I mean, it sounds amazing, and Georgia's beautiful anyway, so I can't even imagine what you step outside and see every day.
It is beautiful. I'm very fortunate.
Yes. So tell us about more specifically about your creative journey.
Well, most people will start in the same way. I just always loved to draw. One of my earliest memories, probably because I got in trouble, was altering a baby picture of one of my older sisters. I took a crayon and I put a hat on her head with a flower coming out of it, and I was just like, oh my gosh, this just changes the whole mood of this picture. So I was fascinated with that, got in trouble for it, which I'm sure is the reason it was sort of tattooed in my brain as an early memory. But I've just always loved to make things. My mother sewed. She was not, my mother didn't paint or draw, but she loved to crochet and sew. And I would watch her intently and was fascinated watching a flat piece of fabric turn into a dress or a ball of yarn turn into this beautiful little doily that she would make. But fairly soon, watching her wasn't good enough. I had to do it myself. I just had this compulsion to experience that firsthand. So when I was probably 8 or 9, I started making my own Easter dress every year, and always altered the pattern to make it something uniquely my own. I took great pride in doing that. I made my wedding dress. And all during that time, I also loved to paint, draw. A piece of white paper when I was a child with no lines on it was just a treasure to me. My mom saved the little white, some of you might not even be old enough to remember this, but ladies' hosiery came with a plain white piece of cardstock, and she saved all of those for me. And those were my substrates when I was a little girl. I would use every single one of them, the top of a bakery box. So I've just always loved to draw and create things. There was no art in school when I was coming along. My senior year in high school was the first year we had an art teacher. But if you asked me when I was growing up what I wanted to be when I grew up, it was an artist. And so when I went to college, I started out majoring in art, minoring in music. And within the first 2 years, I decided to change my major to nursing. But I made a vow to myself and to my art professors that I would always keep art as not just a hobby, as a true avocation, something that I seriously pursued. And I stayed true to that all of those years. So that when I was able to step away from my nursing career, I'd be ready. So I think creativity is like a muscle. If you don't keep it in shape, it will shrivel.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's so true, isn't it? It's like when you've stepped away for a while to step back in, it's hard to get back into the rhythm of things.
Right.
How did you balance nursing and creating and all of the other things in life? How did you manage to keep that alive?
Well, I did. I will have to say I was very fortunate. The majority of my nursing career, nurses were so in demand, and their scheduling options were very, it was an incentive for people to come into the nursing profession because you could work limited hours and still get paid for a full-time position. So there were a lot of years that I only worked the weekends and I had Monday through Friday off, or I worked two 16-hour shifts per week, had every weekend off. I worked every Tuesday and every Friday because everybody wanted Fridays off. So Lillie Morris is willing to work 16 hours on Friday. That allowed 2 other nurses in critical care to be off on a Friday. So I had these abbreviated schedules that I don't know that I would have been able to be as successful with my art had I not had those options available to me, raising a family and everything else. But it served me well.
You currently work in the abstract realm. Can you tell us more about how your journey led you there?
Well, I think like most artists, we're fascinated learning how to draw something that's three-dimensional, put it on a flat surface and make it look reasonably
Mhm.
um, like the subject itself. So, that was my aim for many, many years. I love to draw. I did portraits. I did house portraits. I started out mostly working in pencil, to be honest, pencil and colored pencil. And then I evolved into watercolor, still was doing mostly representational work. And in the early 2000s, I took a workshop. I don't know if any of you have ever heard of spring made workshops. It's more of a Southeastern thing, but it was a big workshop in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. And I took a collage workshop from Carrie Burns Brown. And she was just a phenomenal teacher. Sadly, we lost her this year. She taught until I'd say probably 5 years ago. I mean, she was amazing. Her energy and her willingness to travel and teach was it just really remarkable. But the class I took from her, we made our own collage materials, and we didn't do anything that we were looking at. Everything was just driven by composition and value and putting these pieces of paper down. And it kind of harkened back to my love of making things. So we did all these abstract paper paintings, and it was really pivotal. I felt a shift taking place where instead of trying to depict what I was looking at and restate on a piece of paper what I was looking at, I found myself tapping into something that was inside of me that I was putting down on a flat surface, and nobody had seen that ever before, and it was just really, it was liberating and fascinating. And I just found myself feeling a real sense that this was a direction that I wanted to pursue. And I've continued to pursue that over the years. I don't work in collage quite as much as I used to, but the transfer from that to doing the same thing with paint has taken up, I'd say, the last 5 years of my life.
Yes, yes. I think I heard you refer to it once as you started painting from the outside in, and now are painting from the inside out.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's beautiful, and every piece has to be so personal then.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. Sometimes I have to step back after a piece is finished and really evaluate what it is in me that has come out in this piece. Sometimes it's very subconscious, the things that come out.
Yes.
Some of the pieces that I've done for the show were done back in the spring because of my travel plans. I did my work much earlier in the year, and we had a beautiful spring. The greens were just amazing. The weather was much cooler than it typically is here in Georgia, or it stayed cooler for much longer than it typically does. And I noticed that, as I was working on these pieces, that some of the colors were just glimpses, things that, maybe a flash over here that I would see, and then it somehow gets embedded in my mind and then comes back out without me really planning for that to happen. Some of the blues, I've noticed pictures that I took of dragonflies that were this bright teal color, and the red Georgia clay, the skies, the colors of the different variety of greens. So yeah, sometimes you don't go into the painting saying, I am going to paint these spring greens.
Yeah.
You might have an idea that green is going to be the dominant color, but my experience in my landscape, part of my process of painting includes walking in the natural world for a good 20 minutes before I come to the studio, and it's like filling up a tank, so to speak. I'm just amazed at nature and the reciprocal relationship we have with nature. We oftentimes take for granted.
Yes, yes. Well, and so do you walk every morning? How do you get out into nature and into your surroundings? And you talked a little bit about how that inspires your work, but do you plan that each day to get out?
Yeah. Well, I don't know how this will work. I've got a laptop, but I can actually, if you want me to, I can pick it up and open the door to my studio, and maybe you can see. I don't know how well the camera will work.
Oh, wow. Oh my gosh, it's beautiful, Lily.
So we have a couple of ponds, and my house is over to my right. So, I mean, even to walk to my studio is about, an eighth of a mile. I mean, so even if all I do is walk to the studio, it's a little bit of a trek. But I typically walk between those two ponds, and I have a route that I walk between the two ponds and down in a little depressed area that's got two creeks on it. And then we have a neighbor. It's ridiculous that I would even have to go onto someone else's property, but we have a neighbor who has a big open area with a 13-acre pond, and I'll walk around his dam and back. So it's about a mile that I walk. So and sometimes I will take a different route just because I want to see something different.
Yeah.
But
Beautiful. Well, Jennifer says such a beautiful place to make art.
it is.
And your studio looks pretty amazing too.
Well, I did tidy up a little bit.
Yeah, I couldn't show mine today for sure.
Yeah, I might not pan the studio, but
So you have several showpieces to share with us today, I understand.
I do. I'll start with one of the pieces as I was referring to the spring greens. This is definitely one of the paintings that was inspired by this spring and the beautiful greens, just every value of green you can imagine. So this is one of the pieces and I have 4 that are this same size and done in this same general style. It's acrylic on paper.
Oh, it's beautiful. I love the pops of the blue and the orangey kind of red. And so many of your pieces are framed, right? And ready to hang?
Yes, all of them. All of my pieces are framed and ready to hang. Those 24 by 18s, they have plexiglass, so there's no concern about glass breaking. And then I have these 2 small pieces. I think sometimes it's nice to have, like for a bookshelf or a small little nook to have, small.
Yeah.
So these are predominantly red, as you can see. These are called control burn 1 and 2, which is something we have to do on our property periodically. We have to do I didn't mention this, but our property is a tree farm. So we
Oh,
have to manage it according to the forestry services recommendations. So we have to have occasional control burns.
oh, those are lovely. For those of you who will be visiting the show when it goes live, you'll be able to go in and move your cursor over the pictures that Lillie and the other artists are providing of their art, and it'll zoom in and you'll be able to see all the beautiful details in every piece. And I know those 2 pieces they're luscious up close and personal. So,
And then I have this one other, this is another piece that's a little bit larger. It's got a lot of texture to the surface, and this is acrylic on canvas.
oh, lovely. Janet would like to know the name of the first piece that's framed.
Um, it's called Verdant Green.
Verdant green. Yes. Oh my gosh, Lillie, they are just stunning. And I can't wait for everybody to see all of your pieces. We were so excited when you agreed to be part of the show. It's a beautiful show. I think there's going to be something for everyone there because the variety and the colors and the passion of everybody's work just shows through there. So is there anything else that you would like to tell art lovers tonight? Anything we missed?
I don't think so. I'm just delighted to be a part of this show, and I can't say enough about how gracious everybody involved has been. It's been a real pleasure to be a part of Artburst Studios, and I hope to see everybody on the 15th.
Sounds good. Well, thank you, Lillie.
Thank you.
Okay, everyone. So just to catch everyone up here, we are in the middle of interviewing three of our artists for the upcoming Beyond Beautiful show, which opens in just a little over 2 weeks. And the artists have been creating for months and months and months. And boy, does it show. It's just spectacular, just spectacular. So if you have not subscribed on the Artburst website yet, go ahead and do that because you get a 24-hour advance preview of the show, so you can check out all of the art and make sure that you've made your list of priorities. And so we are going to visit now with Stephanie Moon. How are you, Stephanie?
I'm really good. How are you?
Good, you're in Colorado too. So we had that conversation about the heat and I love that green wall behind you.
Thanks.
I think I might need to paint that green on something, especially after Lillie talked about her green. So anyway, I want to know more about you. Tell us about you.
So I grew up in Michigan. So I always had like Lake Michigan and beautiful like mossy forests and lots of wildlife kind of in my childhood. And kind of got to grow up in the country, so like farm fields and stuff behind. So I always had just kind of like calm, nature inspired childhood. And my mom, she would never credit herself as an artist, but she always really kind of embraced like art making as I was growing up. So we always did like crafts and cards, and we were always kind of like making things. And she's kind of an artist in a different way. She always did like crafts growing up. So um, even when I was like 7 or 8, we like went to craft shows and she had a booth there. And so I would always go and kind of help her sell things. So I think I always had an appreciation that like people wanted something that people were making with their hands and not just stuff that came from the store. So that was a pretty cool childhood to always get to do that. And then I actually did get lucky enough to have art like kindergarten through 12th grade. So I think our school district had a grant for it, but I had great art teachers when I was a little kid. And then like middle school, I had an art teacher that ended up being my high school art teacher. And so it was just really consistent to always be making art and creating. And that was like the best part of my day always. And like both of my grandmas are like kind of artists too, kind of in a casual capacity, but they always were making art. And my grandma taught me watercolors. So I always just had a lot of like making things in my youth. And then I went to Western Michigan and majored in painting and education. So I ended up going out to Colorado from Michigan. It was kind of 2009, like Colorado was still a little more affordable to move to.
Yeah.
So I came out here and just kind of like totally fell in love with mountains, because that was the one piece that's kind of missing from Michigan is the big mountains. But got a teaching job right away. So I taught for 15 years, high school art, and kind of did my own work on the side, did a lot of things on weekends. And then during COVID, I had like a lot more time during like lockdown and everything, a lot more time to just focus on my own work, and kind of was starting to like evolve things more and take things a little bit to the next level. So this past May, I resigned from my teaching job and now I just do art full time, which is super fun.
Oh, congratulations. That's
Thanks.
a huge step to take. It's, there's, I'm sure, a lot of fear involved, and it takes courage to step out there and do that sort of thing. And I'm sure the students miss you.
They do. They do. They still like they'll reach out on like Instagram and message me. And I've had a few like kind of come through my studio space, which is downtown. So, but there's different ways that I can teach. So I'm just going to kind of pursue different capacities for that. But it is really nice to kind of focus on my own work completely. So
I think that's amazing. So, how did you develop your really unique style?
yeah, so I mean my style is all about like tons of colors and like really intense mark making. So like everything is like brush strokes or little dots of paint. I don't really do like a lot of like blending or like super realism. So on it, like I was thinking about it the other day, it really started out of probably about 12 years ago. I was teaching my students about Impressionism and Post-Impressionism, and we were looking at Van Gogh. And so I was just doing kind of a few like studies for them really. And then I was like, man, I really like, this is my favorite style, is like this really bold mark making and really bold colors. So I started taking some reference photos of Colorado and like seeing if I could kind of make it work in his style. So that's really like the very base of it, was kind of looking at Van Gogh's work, the OG, and then just kind of started doing that more, but like my own version of it. So I used to, like 10 years ago, like everything was swirls, and I still have a lot of like very swirly things. But everything was kind of a lot of swirls. And then over time, I kind of, as I was studying the landscape and studying what I was painting, realized there's other ways of like mark making besides just that, that would kind of work with what I want to represent. And so then I think it's just kind of evolved from there. And like my favorite paint brushes are like these teeny tiny like liner brushes. And I don't do my entire paintings with them, but like these are like every single painting that I do is just these teeny tiny little liner brushes. But I think I just like the way that I see the world sometimes is like I see kind of movement happening, and I think about like the way maybe the wind's blowing, or like, I don't know, the way like things are growing. And so I sort of think about like the energy of the natural world, and then how can I represent that energy through all of my little mark making. And like my colors aren't realistic. You can tell what stuff is. It's very like representational, but I think the way that I appreciate art is not trying to make it look exactly realistic, and like kind of having art look like art and photos looking like photos. So a lot of, I guess, reinterpretation of what I'm seeing when I look at the natural world.
You know, you mentioned the word energy, and it's how I would have described your work is there's a lot of movement to it. And when you say that word energy, that's the right word. That's in my head, it kind of clicked when you said it, because you're painting in many cases landscapes where there may not be much movement as you're looking at things, but you make them in such a way that you feel the life in each of the pieces, which I think is beautiful. And the colors as well are incredible. And so what did you start with? I mean, what were your favorite kinds of art early on that evolved into this style?
I think I appreciated things where I could use a lot of color. So I never, because we had like all the range of things that we could try out in school. Like 3D was never really my thing. I think I was kind of like taking our 3D world and then reinterpreting that in like a flat form.
Mhm.
But like I always like paint was obviously always there. Like I did a lot of oil when I was in high school, and acrylic. And then like even like oil pastel I really enjoyed. Not in like a blendy way, but like how you could get like those really like super defined crispy marks with it. Um, but like when I think back, like anything that kind of allowed me to use a lot of color, because all of my work is, so like here's one of my pieces. Um, but I'm not subtle with the colors. So I don't really use like toned down colors. I love like super bright colors.
Yeah.
And this kind of represents like that movement of like energy that I kind of feel when I look at things. But you know, that was probably like really what I enjoyed the most, was like paint and then oil pastels, which makes sense because that's what I stuck with. And I do love printmaking too. It's not something I get to do as often, but I love like lino cut printmaking, which also makes sense because that's a lot of like very crispy, smooth lines.
Yes.
And so I still kind of once in a while play with that, but I like that it allows color, but it allows like that line kind of style of mark making that I use in my paintings.
Yes. I find it funny that you have, your favorite brushes, because I have my favorites too. And it's funny, I can have some that are, a similar size and form and everything else, but there's just one of them that's like the brush.
Yeah, it's like never lose it. I need to make sure it stays in good shape.
It's so true. Now, how does art influence your life and your life influence your art?
So like my life, I think, influencing my art. I'm super lucky to live in Colorado. So I live in Colorado Springs, which is the base of Pikes Peak. And that's kind of it's a little cliche, but like that's my other love, is just being outside. And I really love like being outside by myself mostly. So once in a while I hike with other people, but like I kind of get this like sense of euphoria if I'm like outside by myself, especially if I can kind of hike above like tree line. Maybe it's a trail I've never been to before, and it's like, ooh, I don't know what's gonna happen. Um, and so like all of those experiences of like being outside, like it just amps me up. Um, so like last year I did Blue Lakes Trail, which is out by Ouray. And it was like such an intense like excitement from it that it was like weeks of just like I just like had to paint it. So I had all my reference photos that I'd taken while I was hiking, and just was like back painting like paintbrush flowers and all sorts of stuff. But like that, if I don't spend enough time outside, like it shows in my work. So that's something that, especially having a flexible schedule, like this morning I went and hiked for 6 miles before I came into the studio, and that just gets me in the right headspace. So my life certainly influences my art, but then I think art influencing my life, like I think my brain just like never quite shuts off of like, this is all like a painting. This is all something that I could like work at. Like I always, it's hard to like go outside and not see things that I want to paint and not like observe the way that nature is moving or the way that the animals are moving. Like my brain just never quite shuts off of wanting to like look for things that I could then bring into the studio.
Yeah.
So I think it kind of goes both ways, but when you really love, I think what you're creating, it just like it's all sort of wrapped up into one. And so it's really fun to kind of think about it from both sides when I'm outside and then when I'm inside creating too.
Yes. Yes. Well, and I think your love shows through. It shows through on all of your pieces, and they tell stories. I mean, yeah, they're very powerful. So you also have more pieces to share with us.
Yeah. So I've got that celestial piece, which this has kind of been like a big like recent theme, especially after the aurora borealis in May, that people got to see kind of all over the world. But like the Milky Way is like there's a lot of movement in it in the first place, and the Northern Lights, but like that's something that I've really, really enjoyed the past like year, is probably just reinterpreting how I see the night sky and all the movement. I also like my uncle lives down in Albuquerque, so I get the privilege of going down to the desert quite a bit. So like this is a little different than my some of my Colorado pieces, but like painting the desert and then just like thinking about different ways to use color.
Yeah.
So like a lot of us like, or like my students, if I was like painting cactus, like, all right, I got my green paint and I'm ready to go. And that's kind of like where I started, but then thinking of like other colors. So there's like purples, and then all of it's kind of like all of my edges are sort of glowing with like the orange to kind of represent like when the sun kind of first comes up behind a cactus in the desert and kind of makes it feel a little bit warmer. So those are two of my favorite pieces that are in the show. But overall, this collection is kind of representing like the whole, like across the United States. So there's like a piece that kind of is representing Maine and the coastline. And then sort of like the middle of the country and more of like the quiet farm fields, and then Colorado and Montana, and then desert, and all the way to the West Coast, really, with Mount Rainier for one of my pieces too. So it was really fun to kind of explore with this collection, like how to make my style work with a few different subject matters too. So
Yes. I love that diverse selection of pieces that you have with, I think, do you have a lighthouse in one of them?
yeah.
Yeah.
That one's actually on the middle of the wall. So that's the piece that represents Maine. But yeah, it's like coastal Maine, and then the lighthouse and the sunset behind it.
So tell me about the bear. I want to know about the bear. I think if I remember right, for those of you who haven't had a chance to look at the website, we always have artists share fun facts about things. So tell us about the bear.
Yeah, so like I said, I really love hiking by myself more than with people. And so I've had a few bear encounters in Colorado. So thankfully, this bear is grizzly bear. So I'm really thankful that we live in Colorado where there's just black bears, which don't intimidate me quite as much. But I've had a few encounters with bears. same bear, encountering them multiple times on the trail. So the incline is like a really famous hike in Colorado. So you kind of hike up and then it winds back down this big trail. And there was one night where like 3 separate times I ran into the same bear. Like first time I saw him and I was like, oh my God, like he was a big boy, like at least 300 pounds. And kind of just backed away and did what you expected with a bear, and it was okay. And then I was about another mile down, just kept running, and then like heard it crashing in front of me, and like there goes the same bear. And he kind of backed up and I backed up, and then he went on his way. And I was like, okay, that's got to be it. Like 2 bear encounters in one night. Like we're done with this. And then I get probably about 2 more miles down, like almost in Manitou Springs, which is a little town. And like, sure enough, he popped out of the woods one more time on the road. He was going for the dumpsters that are along kind of this back road in Manitou. And by that point, I think we were both like sick of each other. And I was like, are you serious? And he kind of went on his way and was like, oh. And then the other like multiple encounter I had was hiking Blue Lakes Trail, which is out by Ouray. Same thing. It was like really early in the morning. I was by myself, kind of had my head down because I think I was taking like an aspirin or something, and look up and it was a yearling bear. So that's like a bear they would have been born the previous summer. So it's like questionable whether their moms are going to be around. But he just wouldn't leave. So like he kind of was going further up. And so then I was switched backing up, and like I ran into him like 3 times. And he just like, he didn't care. I was a little nervous that his mom was around, but then he went on his way. And then like later that hike, there was like coyotes howling. And so it's all like on the other side of it, it feels great. Cause you're like, that was such a cool experience. While you're in it, it's like,
Yeah,
not bear food today.
I know. Yeah. I was hiking with my sister and we saw a bear, it would have been a month or 2 ago. And it's like, carefully back up and, keep
Wave your
looking
arms around
behind
a
you to
little.
make sure he's not following you. I don't know if I would have seen the bear more than once. I think I don't know what I would have done, but I mean, they're beautiful for sure. But I love that you have a painting with a bear in it. So
Yeah.
what else would you like to tell us about you and your work? Anything else you'd like to add?
I think I'm just excited to be part of this show. I think that as an artist, like I'm always trying to like connect work with people that really like they resonate with things. Because I think that sometimes like landscapes can sort of just be viewed as like it's just a landscape. But like all of our experience, I think as humans, like we are experiencing the world outside, and like that's where our memories kind of come from. It's like our awesome family trips, or like hiking with your sister and seeing a bear. Like there's so many like of our own stories that they happen outside and they happen somewhere beautiful. Or like, I've had couples that like, we got engaged on top of this mountain, we want you to paint it. So I think that hopefully viewers find something that kind of resonates with something that's kind of part of their story. And that's what I really enjoy, is kind of connecting pieces and finding them a happy home with someone that really kind of has a personal connection with it.
Yes. Oh, that's great. Jennifer says, stunning pieces. I love your color choices.
Thank you.
Well, Stephanie, thank you so much for joining us tonight. You have a stunning collection, and people are going to be so excited to see all of them, and they're all ready to hang, correct?
Yeah. So they all are on gallery wrap canvas. So it's nice and thick, painted black, and then hangers on the back. So they can be framed. But a lot of people just kind of go for it right as is too.
Yeah, sounds good. All right. Thank you, Stephanie. I'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Thanks.
Okay, then certainly last but not least.
Hello.
Hello. Oh my goodness. 3 spectacular artists. And as I'm looking at your work, I'm going, okay, I can see nature here too.
Absolutely. The Beautiful show is apparently full of nature.
Yes, which makes it amazing. So tell us about yourself.
Okay, well, I'm Julie. I'm a self-taught artist. I was raised in Southern California and really spent a lot of time as a kid in Arizona because my maternal grandparents had a property that was undeveloped desert that we visited a lot. And it was a wonderful time of my childhood. You know, my grandfather was a kind of an amateur naturalist. He was a rock collector. So he would, you know, hike through the dry desert stream beds and pick up rocks, and he would tumble them in a homemade tumbler. And then he would make us jewelry out of it. So we knew all the names of all the rock obsidian and what was it, petrified wood and Apache tears, and you know, it dripped from our little ears and our necklaces. And he had such a respect for the desert, and he really brought that to us as kids. He would bring tarantulas to the kitchen table and have them walk on his arms as we all looked on in horror, you know, because he was just trying to always teach us about that. And so I learned to really love the desert. I ended up moving here when I was in high school with my folks. I raised my family here. I'm also an avid gardener. I love to garden, not only outdoors, but where I am now, we have so much wildlife that it's really hard to garden outdoors. So I grow my greens in a hydroponic system in the house. So, and I'm a retired nurse. And once I retired from nursing is when I began to paint and teach myself to paint.
That's amazing. Well, I mean, you and Lillie in nursing, it's amazing how sometimes I guess I think of Stephanie and her art really went through her whole life and has continued that way. And then those of us who have other careers, as Lillie said, you know, where, okay, you have to be realistic. Now let's be realistic and let's get a job where you can actually survive. But then how art grows out of that as well.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that my art, just kind of all the pieces of my life come out in it. You know, sometimes it's very botanical and more realistic. Because of the gardener in me, I'm always noticing beautiful plants and growth and all that. But then also I do a lot of abstract work that has to do more with meaning and emotional interior things, you know.
Yes.
So
tell us more specifically about your creative journey.
okay. Well, I all my life, I think I really was an artist. I always drew, I made things. As Lillie said, you know, it was just a part of my life all along with, like I knit our socks. I sewed my kids' clothes. I had a cake decorating business for a while, you know, anything creative, I was all in on it. And so, drawing and painting and everything was always a joy for me, but you know, I never really understood color. So I never really learned to paint and to deal with color until I retired. And then it was so wonderful to have the internet where you can take classes and learn in a way that I never could when I was younger. I mean, it was library books, right?
Yeah.
So really nice to have that time to do a lot of learning on my own. And I spent from 2014, probably a good 6 years really learning to paint and learning about color. And I started out doing pet portraits in oil. So I had quite a little business painting dogs and cats for quite a while. And then at some point I got hooked into doing large abstracts with in a workshop kind of thing. And it just grabbed me. It just absolutely grabbed me. I loved it so much. And looking back, I can see why it's so wonderful for me to paint big, because as a kid, I was always this kind of a hysterical kid. You know, I would get in trouble all the time for overreacting. If I got hurt, I would scream and cry. If I, you know, wanted to explain something, I had to tell it over and over again in colorful language so I wanted to make sure everybody understood. and I would get reprimanded for this quite a bit. So the idea that when I could do this large expressive work, bigger than myself, in bright colors and everything, it just grabbed something in me. I think because it just kind of set free that part of me. Finally, I could say what I really thought, or I could express myself the way I really needed to in this wild, crazy way.
I love that. And you and I we did an Instagram live, and you happened to be at a workshop that you were helping with, and it was just really fun to see these huge canvases. I look at them and I it's so intimidating. I don't know that I could even begin. I mean, yes, we can all, use large canvases, but it just seems, I mean, it's larger than life, and we can actually see that behind you just a little bit there.
Well, it's funny. I'm sorry. I was just going to say, I think that the artists try different things, right? But sometimes the one method grabs an artist based on who they are,
Yeah, just part of finding your style and what makes your heart sing, when you're creating. Like, yeah. So the unique styles, that's what makes everybody's style so different and so unique. So who are some of the instructors that you really loved working with along the way?
Oh, um, I really enjoyed working with Jane Burton. She's a San Francisco artist, or Bay Area artist, and she does the large scale abstracts. And I now work with her and assist her workshops at Santa Fe Artist Getaway. We're doing another one in October. I think we have one spot open. Just a little plug.
Yeah, you bet. You bet. Let's see, what am I doing in October?
Come on, Jennifer.
Hey, you know what? It's always good to learn and grow.
I also worked with a California artist, David Limright, and he had a program where you would work with him for 3 months. It's called Create Anyway. Yeah, Create Anyway, yeah. And so the whole idea of this program is kind of getting you a work ethic to turn out work, because I mean, artists get better by painting, and so it's really about getting in there and painting, having a regular practice, and kind of kicking fear to the curb.
Yes. And that's hard to do sometimes. It is hard
It
to do
is.
sometimes. We're so hard on ourselves and hard on our work and all of that. Now you live in a beautiful place. You've talked about that already. How does that influence your work?
It really does. For one thing, it's part of my self-care routine is to get out and walk every morning. When I first wake up, my husband and I get out and take a hour-long walk. And when we're done, we are rewarded with the hot tub. And here it's very warm this time of year, so we're walking at about 5 in the morning in order to beat the worst of the heat. And so that's the beginning of it. Is I need to get out in nature. I need to walk. It's part of my self-care, not only emotionally but physically, to get exercise and such. And so being out in the desert, and I really feel like that really filters in. It's how I taught myself color, is to gather pieces of the desert and then match the color. And then also I take botanical prints from pieces of nature in the desert, feathers, stones, So it really does filter into my work in lots of ways.
Yes. So Jean says, I have so enjoyed hearing about each of these artists' creative journeys and seeing their beautiful paintings. Thank you. Well, we love it
Thanks,
too,
Jean.
Jean. We love hearing all of the stories. So what keeps you going back into your studio day after day? As you said, in many ways, it just has to become a practice to get back in there and to keep working at it. So what keeps you there?
It does. But I think for me, when the real joy of having this regular practice is it becomes kind of a journey of self-discovery. It really does. It's kind of like meditation or like writing in a journal. And as Lily expressed, sometimes you paint something and then on the other side of it, you learn something about yourself.
Yeah.
And that's what the practice does for me, is I feel like it helps me to express myself. It helps me to learn about myself. It helps me to be one with the world, you know, just kind of grow and evolve.
Yeah, it's amazing what comes out in the paint, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. It really is.
So tell us about the piece behind you.
Oh, okay. So this is called Be the Light. Be the Light is a painting having to do with a bougainvillea that grows along the back of my fence. What I find amazing about it is it's a very woody kind of plant. In this arid environment, it just thrives. And it has the most beautiful red flowers. But what's so interesting about it is its woody, viney nature. And what's gorgeous is when the light is backlit coming through all of those vines, you know, it's just really, really beautiful. So this one was done with negative painting, where what I mean by that is I painted the spaces in between more than I painted the vines themselves, and did a lot of glazing to give that feeling of the light shining through.
Oh, it's
So
magnificent.
it's a big one. It's 72 by 72 inches. So it will stretch out to like 64, about 5 foot by 5 foot, a little more than 5 by 5 foot. Yeah. So that'll be a nice big painting for someone. I have a couple of smaller ones that, and I don't usually paint small, so it's always a challenge for me, but I really had fun with these. This one is called Love Notes to Self. And it is just a kind of a mixed media piece consisting of botanical prints and color notes and papers that I made with, I don't know if anybody has heard of a jelly plate, but it's basically a way to make a monoprint of desert plants and stuff.
Yes.
So
Oh,
that's one.
beautiful.
This one is 18 by 24. And then one more. This one is called Stand Strong. And you can see the botanical print here.
Lovely, lovely.
And when, you know, when it was really fun to make these, you are following the theme,
Yeah.
you know, because as I was making it, like I said, things would appear and I would feel what the meaning was as it evolved. And I felt like this one really, really spoke to me about strength of character and
Yes.
stand strong against
Oh my goodness.
whatever.
Now with your bigger piece, if somebody purchases that, so it'll probably need to be shipped. So what can they
Yes.
expect when they purchase this and receive it in the mail?
It's on unstretched canvas, so it would be shipped directly to their framer in their area. And the framer would stretch it for them and deliver it to them.
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
rolled in a tube. Yeah.
Yeah. It's gonna make such an incredible statement in the right place and in the right room. And you know, you talked about the sunlight filtering through. You can feel the almost the warmth of the sunlight as it comes through through on that painting. It's just yeah, they're all magnificent.
Thank you. It's so hard to really see it just on a video. It's in person is where you can really see, like most art, right?
Yes, yes. And so if anybody has any questions about any of the art on this, feel free to go to our website and to click through to all of these artists' websites and contact them directly and get, you know, all of your questions answered before the show goes live. And they will be available during the show to answer the questions as well. It's going to be difficult to narrow down your hunt because there are some truly beautiful pieces of art, and they range in size from smaller pieces all the way up to big, large statement pieces, because we wanted everybody to have an opportunity to find just that perfect piece for the space in their home or in their office or whatever. Now, Julie, do you have anything else that you would like to add?
I don't think so. I don't think so. You always make it enjoyable to talk about my art, and I really appreciate being able to talk with you tonight about that.
Oh, well, you know what? I could listen for hours because I'm just fascinated by all of your stories and all of the unique pieces of everyone's work here. Well, thank you for joining us tonight, Julie.
Thank you.
Okay, my goodness. Talk about an hour of inspiration. I don't know about you. I might actually have to get into my studio tonight just because of all of the different ideas that come to mind when I hear from these amazing, truly amazing artists. So just as a reminder for everybody, the show goes live on August 15th at 10 a.m. Mountain Daylight Time. So make sure that you check in your time zone so that you're arriving at the right time. The show only lasts 56 hours. So you've got 56 hours to come in and out and find the art that you absolutely love. And all of our artists would be so excited to talk to you. So if you have any questions of them, make sure and ask. And if there's an artist whose work has really spoken to you, make sure you sign up for their newsletters, because who wouldn't want to follow their adventures along the way? So again, the show opens August 15th at 10 a.m. Mountain Daylight Time. If you subscribe on the Artburst website, then you'll get a 24-hour advance preview of all of the art so that you can make your priority list in advance. But we are so delighted that you could join us tonight, and we look forward to seeing you at the show. Thank you, everyone.